Okay, we're just about ready. It's going live right now.
I see it says it is streaming live. So I can start now? You ready?
Okay, we're all good.
Okay. Well, welcome all and good evening. My name is Shelley Mayer, State Senator for the 37th Senate District, which for purposes of our Westchester residents who are hopefully watching tonight, as I say, goes from the Bronx border in Yonkers on McLean Avenue, if you know Yonkers, all the way up to the border with Connecticut. It goes through North Castle and Bedford, and on the way, 3 cities, Yonkers, New Rochelle, and White Plains, the entire Sound Shore, as well as Eastchester, includes obviously Harrison, Mamaroneck, Raya, Portchester, Larchmont, and then, as I say, up to North Castle and Bedford. It's a diverse district. It's a district that really lends itself to the conversation for tonight, full of people who care deeply about the environment, diverse communities that include urban communities like Yonkers and Portchester, rural communities like Bedford, and many traditionally suburban communities, but with a tremendous amount of energy about the environment. And that's why tonight we put together this program called Acting Locally and Globally, Preserving and Protecting Our Environment, with a fantastic panel that I'm so very proud to sponsor, that is here to both talk about some of the sort of global or state issues, maybe some federal too, and some of the local activism that really marks what is happening in our community. Just in terms of announcement, if you're on the Zoom, feel free to write questions in the Q&A that is here. If you are on Facebook, the staff will be moderating Facebook. Please write your questions and they will be sent to me, and I will pose them if they're appropriate, and hopefully they are, to the panelists. I want to start out by saying, as a state senator and someone who cares deeply about the environment, although I'm not on the committee, I'm the chair of the Senate Education Committee. Our legislature, particularly the Senate Majority Conference, has so much to be proud of for its activism on the environment, led by my colleague, who is here tonight, Senator Todd Kaminsky, chair of the Senate Environmental Conservation Committee. But I do want to point out before we start that in the budget we just adopted, and I hope Todd talks about it, we continue to add to our leadership. 2 years ago, or last year, when we passed the CLCPA, which is really the national leader model in environmental sustainability. But this year we did additional things in the budget, authorizing the $3 billion Environmental Bond Act of 2021, which was put off because of COVID, but will now be on the ballot in 2022, and will allow the state, if it's passed, to spend really billions of dollars on infrastructure that furthers the intent of the CLCPA and continues to build a green New York. So maybe Todd will talk about it, I hope so. We extended the tax credit for brownfield redevelopment projects subject to COVID-related delays. I've seen that throughout my district. The development was set back by COVID, but we want those programs and projects to move forward. We did that. And an important thing is we ensure that good jobs are created on the state renewable energy credit projects through the expansion of prevailing wage, labor peace, Buy American and Buy New York procurement preferences. If you know anything about me, you know I'm a strong supporter of labor. I really think they need to be at the table in this conversation. And I'm so pleased that with Senator Kaminsky's leadership, we were able to include provisions in this program that are really going to benefit the workers and ultimately our neighbors that are here in New York. So let me jump to our first panel, which is going to be individual. Each of the panelists will get about 7 minutes to talk about some of the major policies that they've been involved in that are being advanced right now at the state level and maybe the federal level to advance sustainability and environmental stewardship. And the first speaker is my colleague, Senator Todd Kaminsky, from Long Island, a fantastic partner of mine. We were in the assembly together. We both ended up in the Senate together, where we have the ability to have really substantial impact on the areas that are important to us. I'm going to try to make Senator Kaminsky larger. For some reason, he is not as big in my screen as I would like, but maybe that can be fixed. And with that, Senator Kaminsky, welcome. Thank you for coming virtually back to Westchester again. You were here before the CLCPA to talk about the bill. And now another chance for you to talk about the successes you've had and the priorities that you have set for our conference. So thank you for being here.
Now, thank you, Senator Mayor. It's an honor to be here. This is all of the wonder of Westchester without any of the traffic between Long Island and Westchester. So this is very nice. Really glad to be here and really grateful to have a partner in you and the majority leader in advancing a really aggressive environmental agenda. New York's been leading, and one of the silver linings of having the Trump administration in Washington is it really highlighted the importance of state action. And I hope that our state action really highlights the importance of local action. And we'll get to that in a minute. But everybody who's listening to this today can be an environmental champion and can move mountains, whether it starts in a high school cafeteria all the way up to your local and county governments. There's such tremendous change you can make. Just want to highlight a few of the things we're doing in New York. And the first one is the one I'm most proud of, and that is the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act that I was fortunate to author and get passed 2 years ago. And that is a bill that sets the framework that our state has enacted for where we're going to fight climate change. It's the most aggressive in the country. And it says by 2040, all of our state's energy are going to come from non-fossil fuel sources. And that by 2050, our entire economy is going to be a carbon neutral economy. That means the cars that are being driven on the road will be different. The houses that you have will not be heated by gas-fired boilers or by oil heat. The buildings that you walk into, office buildings and other buildings every day, school buildings, hospital buildings, colleges, everything will have a completely different energy setup just a few decades away. And this is important because in order to send the signal to the market, to get companies to want to invest in New York, to build the infrastructure to make it happen, to develop the work and labor force that's going to be the best in the country at building out green energy, we needed to be first and be bold and set the framework that we're going to have to stick to. And it created a Climate Action Council, and you're fortunate enough to have one of the Climate Action Council members in Raya Salter here today. And this council is going to be making really tough determinations about how to reach those goals, setting regulations that will have the force of law, and it's really important. So why I'm telling you this is that even when you're sleeping and I'm sleeping, or we're going about our daily lives, the Climate Action Council is working, and they're figuring out really difficult, thorny problems about transportation and buildings and industry and how to power high-intensive, energy-intensive factories, and coming up with solutions to all of these things. And they're going to be starting to act pretty soon, coming out with reports and making tough decisions. And so that Climate Action Council is really important, and we set that into motion, and they're working. Now, that doesn't mean that the legislature is sitting there while the Climate Action Council is working. There are lots for us to do, and we're doing it. So a couple of things that we're doing on climate that's important. One, we're going to be passing on Monday a bill just from one of your neighbors, Senator Pete Harckham, that is going to only allow the sales of electric vehicles or non-carbon powered vehicles starting in 2035. That's not too far away, and that's an important bill we're passing. We're doing lots on climate factors. I have a bill I'm really excited about this session about low carbon concrete. You know, the number one surface on the planet Earth after water is concrete, and it accounts for a tremendous amount of the emissions that we have in our state. But low carbon concrete can flip that whole equation on its head and actually act as a sink for carbon. So if we encourage big projects to be built with low carbon concrete by providing bidding preferences and other tax breaks, we could really encourage the use of a whole nascent industry. And we really think that the building industry is ready to transition to that, and we want to lead the way with this low carbon concrete law. So even though the Climate Action Council are experts doing this intricate planning, we're working too. But as we approach Earth Day tomorrow, sustainability is really something that we need to be thinking about. And that's something you could certainly do on your local level. I know I brought this up, alluded to it before, but you know, I'm proud of kids in my district who changed their middle school policies to get rid of styrofoam way before our county government had do it. And these are smart policies. But we're doing really great things on the state, from a plastic bag ban to other things. But I've got two issues I want to bring up. One, we're going to pass this Monday, I'm really excited about, and it bans hotels from having small plastic toiletries. Just in New York City alone, tens of millions of toiletries are thrown out every year. Like, they end up in landfills and in waste streams and streets, on beaches, in the bellies of animals. And there's no reason why hotels can't have dispensers, just like your local gym might. And I'm really excited to get that done. The Assembly passed it yesterday. We're going to be passing it Monday. And we're going to be making an important change right there. And industry has not been such an obstacle as you might think. They realize that this transition is important to their customers. So the more you get involved in the environment, the more you say this is important to you, the more corporate America is going to listen. And so hotels work with us. They wanted some time to do it and asked me to push back the effective date a couple of years. But to know that by 2024, when you go in a hotel, it's going to be different in New York and hopefully lead the way for the rest of the country, I think is very important. And it's going to make a material difference on the environment. The last thing I want to speak about is a revolution in recycling that's really important. And it's called EPR, Extended Producer Responsibility. And it's a solution that Canada and Europe have been using, but we need to do in New York. You know, in my town of Long Beach, Long Island, where I live, a lot of what we think might be recycled doesn't end up being recycled. It ends up getting tossed into landfills. And it's a shame, because the markets for purchasing our recycled products have plummeted, mainly due to China, but elsewhere too. And that's a big problem. That means municipalities are losing money. They don't have the latest technological machines that could produce the best high-end products. And it means it's really bad for our environment. And that's because the producers of this plastic and paper packaging don't have to consider what they're putting out into the world. We've all gotten that Amazon box, and inside the box is a smaller box, and inside that box is a little sleeve with a tube of toothpaste in it. Or we see that iced tea with metal stenciling on the glass bottle that could rip up your locality's machines that are supposed to turn that into pure glass to sell to someone. So EPR would make corporations have to pay for the type and the amount of products they're putting out there. And this money would end up going to municipalities to help them offset their costs. And it would create a real circular economy where they are deciding to do less packaging and more eco-friendly packaging. So I'm really excited for EPR. The New York Times wrote a really cool story about 6 weeks back saying, will this bill, save recycling? Some really nice headline like that. And it's great. There's a lot of momentum for it. It's scaring people to some extent because it's new, but I'm really excited for it. It's worked all over wherever it's been tried. Recycling rates in Canada are exponentially greater than ours, and we could do it. So I just want to leave you with a final message, which is we keep pushing the boundaries every week, every month in Albany on this, because it's an issue you care about, because we have no choice. We're seeing what's happening with our planet, and really powered by young people who don't want to be left with a planet that they find unsustainable. I go to 5th grade classes all the time. It's a grade I like to talk to because they're not yet jaded. They kind of think I'm still cool, and they have a sense of like how government works. And when I ask them if they could be governor for a day, what would they do? 9 out of 10 times, without any prompting from me, they say they would do something to help the environment. They would end pollution. They would help animals. They would try to help the planet. They would save the ocean. They feel it in their bones, and it's our job to work on their behalf. And that's what Senator Mayer and I get to do every day in Albany, and the best is yet to come. And we look forward to continuing to work with you in Westchester to help push the envelope. So thank you so much, Shelley. It's been an honor.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Senator Kaminsky. Pleasure to have you and your leadership. Thank you so much. I would say that my 3.5-year-old grandson, also his number one priority is that he could pass a law to prohibit people from throwing garbage out the window. So this seems to be the number one, besides racial justice, I say that the environment is number one. But thank you so much for being with us. Thank you for your leadership. And I appreciate it very, very much. I didn't introduce by name our other panelists, and I want to let people know because they really are so distinguished. Next, we're going to have Raya Salter from the Climate Action Council, but she has a distinguished resume, which I will mention. We also have Donovan Gordon, the Director of Clean Heating and Cooling from NYSERDA, the state agency that is dealing with so many of these issues. And Julie Tighe, the President of the New York League of Conservation Voters, who those of us in government worked with for many years when she was in DEC, and has an extraordinary advocacy agenda. And then when we talk about local issues, in the second part of the program, Nina Orville, the new Executive Director of Sustainable Westchester, which has a extraordinary record of achievement in Westchester and a future full of activism, particularly in communities that have not seen all the benefits of environmental sustainability. And I'm so pleased to have her. Karen Sabath, the board president of Bedford 2030. One of the joys of my job is I got to find about Bedford 2020, now Bedford 2030, an extraordinary story of success in a particular community that really should be replicated. And I'm so happy to have Karen. And then Mitch Green, the chair of the Town of Mamaroneck Sustainability Collaborative. So we're going to have both the state views and the more local views, and hopefully give us the appetite and also all the tools we need to continue our activism. So with that, I'd like to introduce Raya Salter. Raya is an attorney, consultant, educator, and clean energy law and policy expert with a focus on energy and climate justice. She's a member of the New York State Climate Action Council, which she's going to brief us on. She briefed me last week, and it's just fantastic. You can bring her picture up, please. Raya, come on out here. And Raya is an adjunct professor of law at Fordham Law School. She was named to this position by our leader, Senator Andrea Stewart-Cousins, the majority leader. And she is just a whirlwind of energy and vision. And I would like to say, because I care about this, pragmatic about using the tools we have to really achieve change. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Raya.
Thank you so much, Senator Mayer. Thank you so much, Senator Kaminsky, for inviting me here, for having this forum on Earth Week, Earth Day, and for, yes, your incredible leadership on environmental issues, very much including the CLCPA, which created the Climate Action Council, which I will brief you on. And yes, I had thank you for that great introduction. So yes, I'm an attorney. I have a background in both energy regulation, mergers in the context of mergers and acquisitions, and doing clean energy advocacy. Something that also, though, I'm a longtime New Rochelle resident. I care deeply about about these local issues and making sure that we see these just transformations happening. And I also, before I became a lawyer, I worked for the Grayston Foundation on Warburton Avenue in middle school programming. So these training and education issues are very near and dear to my heart. But let's go ahead and start with the Climate Action Council update. Next slide, please. So, as Senator Kaminsky detailed already, the Climate Action Council was formed pursuant to the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act. And what the council is tasked with is creating the actual plan, a plan for how the state will get to its really ambitious energy goals that Senator Kaminsky alluded to. And that plan will be, by statute, turned into regulations. Next slide, please. Just one back. Thank you so much. So this is just a quick run through of just how ambitious indeed New York's goals are. We're talking about not only 100% net zero carbon electricity, but we're talking about having net zero economy-wide by 2050. It is the nation's most ambitious goals with regard to emissions reductions, and truly the only state in the nation that has the type of climate justice provisions that it does. Next slide, please. So, figured an org chart was in order in terms of what is this Climate Action Council, because it is a really big process. We've got, and on top in this chart, you see the actual statute, because the statute created this. It creates the Climate Action Council, and then to advise the council are several advisory panels. There are over 100 experts and stakeholders who have been appointed to these panels. And as we speak, I've loved it, Senator Kaminsky, while you sleep, we are hard at work thinking of these solutions, but folks really are. So you've got a myriad, over 100 experts who are impaneled and are coming up with these recommendations. And then there are additional groups, a Just Transition Working Group, a Climate Justice Working Group that I'll talk more about later. So this is this council that is made up of agency heads, appointees like myself, and is chaired by the DEC and NYSERDA. Next slide, please. So something it's really important to focus on is this climate justice working group. Why? Now, one of the groundbreaking things that the CLCPA did was require that a goal of 40% and no less than 35% of the benefits of all climate spending go to what the statute calls disadvantaged communities. So this is a real investment reframe into our, not only our urban areas, but I think it has very profound implications for our towns and municipalities and cities in particular. This climate justice working group is impaneled by statute by environmental justice advocates and others, and they are deciding as we speak, while you sleep, what does it mean to be a disadvantaged community? Where does this focus need to be? Now, preliminary recommendations are coming out soon. We should expect by this summer, we'll have a public engagement process to talk about this criteria and what it means. Again, big things for, in particular, our cities, our municipalities. We're talking about a real redirect of how funding is allocated for climate. Also, just as important, we really shook the ground with the CLCPA, and the Biden-Harris administration has adopted this 40% for disadvantaged communities piece. They call it the Justice 40. And so not only has this had huge impact on the federal level, but those same federal folks are really looking to us in terms of what will these criteria look like? How is our process coming along, and what is New York going to come up with? Next slide, please. So just a little bit more about the scoping plan itself. Right now, we just had a big meeting actually last week. And so all these panels are working. And right now, this month and next month, these recommendations are coming back to the Climate Action Council. What's then going to happen is that the NYSERDA and DEC have some consultants who will be working on what they call an integration analysis, sort of taking all these pieces and putting it together, and then idea of rolling it up to a plan, a draft plan that will emerge over the summer and fall. There will be iteration on that plan. And the idea is that we'll have an actual public engagement process next year where we talk, with everyone about what this plan is going to entail. Next slide, please. So what are some of the key pieces coming out of the Climate Action Council? Something that's very near and dear to my heart are issues in terms of gender equity, minority and women-owned businesses, education, job training. We just had a great presentation from the Just Transition Working Group just at the last meeting. And so there's a tremendous amount of activity and brainpower going into just really getting at, in particular, what is this education and training piece? That's something I'm looking out for. A lot of advocates have pieces. There's some concerns about, is this really going to be the end of gas? Like, we want to see recommendations come out that no more new gas plants, if we're real about this. And some concerns about some of the technologies that are being put forward and called renewable, which really are indeed, still using fossil fuels, are still engaging methane and being very carbon intensive to produce and harmful to air quality, environmental justice communities and others. So those are some of the concerns that are coming forth. Next slide, please. So yes, as I've alluded to before, we had a meeting, a full day meeting, full 6 hours, where we heard from the waste panel, we heard from agriculture and forestry, we heard from energy transition and trade exposed industry. And I am here to report that I am encouraged. Is the process perfect? No, but it is deep. There are deep engagement from panelists, deep facilitation by the state. NYSERDA has hired an executive director for the Climate Action Council and a climate justice advisor. And I think some of the concerns that remain, we just, especially those of us who are appointed, are just really pushing for more transparency, more public engagement, more iteration in public. So, before the entire CAC, so we can have a plan that's really the people's plan. Next and final slide. Our next meeting is May 10th. I encourage everyone, you can sign up for updates. Almost all of the meetings are virtual. You can attend if you like, and I just really encourage folks to do that. So I hope that this has been helpful. Thank you so very much.
So wait a second before you leave, because Raya, this is, it is dense and there's lots in there. I guess one of my very pragmatic questions is, you seem to have a good deal of confidence that at the end of this process, you're going to come out with very pragmatic and realistic proposals that the state actually can adopt to meet the goals of the CLCPA. Does everybody sort of share that view that's on the CAC or involved with all those work groups that you described? I mean, is there a sense of we're really moving towards implementation of this broad goal?
Well, I can't speak for other folks, which I'm sure we'll understand. I am, and it really is sort of like a day by day, and I do encourage folks, we need to have our eyes on this process. We want folks to be engaged, to speak up when they see issues. We want it to be transparent. It is an engaged process. Panelists are, many hours a week, many meetings a week. And so I am very encouraged by that. We know that this process by statute will result in regulations. So that's important. And so it is we are bird dogging every day, every meeting to try and promote the best possible result.
Well, it is such an ambitious goal when we implemented it, and I was never quite sure how it would translate into reality. So it's very exciting to hear about the work you're doing, and I hope that you keep us, we will sign up, but do you keep us posted on as you move towards these recommendations? It's going to be quite extraordinary change on the horizon for everyday New Yorkers, as well as sort of our major players. But thank you so much, Raya. Thank you for your leadership, the passion. I loved when Raya briefed me and I had to keep asking what this word meant and that word meant, because you're wonderful about not having it all behind the words of the certain community. I like when things are explainable to all of us, and I really do appreciate your scholarship and leadership, and again, your willingness to engage in this. Thank you so much for doing this. There's several questions. I'm trying to reserve them for the right person who I think will know the answer. So I haven't forgotten about those questions that are there. And next, we're going to hear from Donovan Gordon, the Director of Clean Heating and Cooling at NYSERDA, the New York State Energy Research and Development Agency. And he leads New York State's effort to develop markets that support renewable, high efficiency and clean thermal systems, including solar thermal, solid biomass heating systems, air, ground, and water source heat pumps. He's charged with conceptualizing, driving, and implementing products to encourage and enable customers and partners to invest in these systems. So we have a specific question about encouraging the workforce, which I hope you'll get to, Donovan. Love to have you. Thank you for being here, and welcome so very, very much to joining our group tonight.
Thank you for having me, Senator Mayor. I'm going to share my screen.
Great.
And do the presentation. Okay, so again, thank you for having me. And yes, I have the easy task of converting New York State's buildings off of fossil fuels and onto clean energy solutions. So Senator Kaminsky and Mayor Raya just talked about the CLCPA, and so we know what the goals are. But I just want to start off by stating what the pathways are to get there. And from a building standpoint, okay, what this chart is saying is by 2030, between 50 and 70% of all heating systems sold need to be heat pumps. And by 2050, 95 to 100%. So literally, we should not be allowing, the installations of fossil fuel-based heating systems. And also, this chart says that by 2040, 100% of vehicles should be electric vehicles. So having that ban starting in 2035 certainly is relevant and important. So what we're doing, again, I'm going to focus on the building side, is that it takes several activities. Energy efficiency, you have to reduce your consumption. You have to insulate your building or your home, install a heat pump for space heating, cooling, and hot water, and also renewable energy solutions. So when we developing policy priorities, the biggest issue is how do we rapidly scale these high performance, low carbon solutions. And I'll say this, that when we say 50 to 70% of sales being heat pumps, there are approximately 4.5 million buildings in New York State, of which we're trying to decarbonize all of them by mid-century. So if you do the simple math, right, 4.5 million divided by 30 years is 150,000 a year. Divide that by 365 days a year, so I'll be working 7 days a week. That's a little over 400 buildings per day, every day for the next 30 years to hit that goal. It is a daunting, astronomical goal, but so we have to figure out how to scale this. Also, we have to reduce costs. Costs needs to come down, and it's going to happen through technology innovation. And we need to manage an orderly natural gas transition. So to that point, we're not going to cut the spigot right now, but we do need to transition off of natural gas. Several things NYSERDA is working on, and the reason I put that in there because I knew we had the Climate Action Council person here. We're working on 2 separate roadmaps to decarbonization. First is a carbon neutral roadmap that takes us out to 2050. That will give us policy recommendations and investment ideas to hit the 2050 goal, and a building electrification roadmap focused more on building decarbonization, and it looks out to 2030 to help us hit that goal. And we'll come up with outlining market development milestones and strategies and investments to hit those goals. Again, the target audience is the Climate Action Council members, state and local government agencies, and folks interested in clean energy advocates. This is where I want to spend a little time because I know Raya spent time on environmental justice, so I'll focus on this. This is the investment that NYSERDA is making over the next 5 years to help develop the heat pump markets. It's called New York State Clean Heat Market Development Plan. It's approximately $230 million, and that's in addition to what the utilities are investing or budgeted to invest over the next 5 years for incentives for heat pumps, which is $454 million. And I start with one at the top: training and development. That is the number one single line item in our budget. We need a skilled and trained workforce, and we need to build a pipeline. One fact: approximately 50% of all HVAC contractors are going to be retiring over the next 5 years, 5 to 10 years. So we need to, yes, retrain the ones that are still in the workforce, but build a pipeline. So middle and high school kids, getting them introduced to this. I won't go through all of these, but and then LMI, low to moderate income, another $31 million to develop demonstration projects of different building typologies to make sure that these products, these technologies are available to low to moderate income households. We have a community focus, several community programs. We have clean energy communities, which helps municipalities, and we now have a new round called the Clean Energy Communities Leadership Round, which is about $17 million. So certainly go on our website, or you can follow up with me, and I can connect you to the person that's managing that for NYSERDA. His name is Brad Tito. Climate Smart Communities, same person that manages that. One of the programs that I just recently launched is called Community Heat Pump Systems Pilot Program. This is like district large-scale installations, and this is in line with trying to increase the scale of these installations so we can have hundreds, if not thousands, of installations rather than tens or 20s or a couple hundred installations, going from installation with contractors to infrastructure projects with large engineering firms. So, and as we look to get monies from the infrastructure bill, we certainly think this is an appropriate place to invest. Also, we have, and Nina may touch on this in hers, clean heating and cooling community campaigns. They've been branded locally as Heat Smart. And these are local community-based organizations or municipalities that we give funding to do outreach at the local level, grassroots level, to educate, inform, and help residents navigate their way through adopting and installing these solutions. This is just a sense of how the clean energy communities have been doing. We're doing quite well. We have 601 communities participating, 325 that are designated clean energy communities, which covers 16 million New Yorkers. So we're doing, and these docs, we're doing pretty well. Certainly in the Westchester, Mid-Hudson Valley area, we're doing quite well in terms of participation. We have I've mentioned the leadership round, and there's significant funding available. So again, if you're a municipality, please contact us or your clean energy community team member, and we'll help you understand what's appropriate for you. Environmental justice, I only have a couple minutes left. I am timing myself for 7 minutes. You know, Raya covered a lot of this, but we certainly want all the programs that we do to be inclusive. And one of the big things that we want to co-design our initiatives with stakeholders from the community. A lot of times the state comes out with programs and just says, here's a program, and folks say, well, what's that? We had nothing to do with it. We don't know about it. So we want to be inclusive and make sure that they're part of the process in developing these programs. And this is just funding that, you know, we have about $880 million between the utilities and NYSERDA that we're committed to support LMI initiatives over the next 5 years. So I'll pause there because I think I'm a little bit over my 7 minutes. So.
Well, that was fantastic. I have a lot of questions, but I'm going to ask the question that was here, which is basically, if you're working with the State Board of Regents and BOCES in this education and training of students in the new sustainable economy, I know you're focused on that. And I know, you know, for me, I'm very focused on career and technical education as a pathway for many, many New York high school students. But are you working with the regents, or is there a program to build in this education, like you said, at the middle school and high school level?
Yeah, so there's several things. So our funding comes through the Clean Energy Fund. So you have to pay into the system benefits charge. So some of these schools don't, but we have gotten some really good allocation from RGGI funds that we're actually going to launch a green schools program next year. But the focus is on disadvantaged communities. So it will be putting clean energy solutions in the schools, but also tying education to it as well. So the school actually becomes like a living lab where they're installing the technologies and educating the children, you know, the students on these technologies.
But there's opportunity for us on the education side to continue to build awareness of these jobs. Absolutely. That will be good paying jobs that will be out there that require additional training and trades expertise.
We need to figure out how to encourage these kids to get it back into the trades, because they want to either do apps or software, you know, which is all great. But, you know, back in the late 70s and 80s, a lot of kids were told, get into the trades, and they did. And those are the folks that are retiring now. Yes. So we really need to talk to superintendents and to guidance counselors to really encourage those who want to get into this field to get into it.
Yeah,
we need them.
Thank you. I actually have a bunch more questions. I look forward to following up afterwards. I'm quite interested in the interplay with the utility companies. You didn't describe that. I'm interested in how cooperative they have been. And I'm so glad to see about all these grant opportunities. I hope people take notice of the opportunities you presented. But thank you, Donovan, so much.
Thank you.
Perfect. Stay within your time, but also gave us a lot to sink our teeth into. Thank you. And next is I really I'd like to say an old friend, but someone who's been around government for a long time and an activist, Julie Tighe, the president of the New York League of Conservation Voters, which has a robust advocacy agenda. And I know there is another question among the other one that I told you about the CCIA, Julie, that the other bill, I think Senator Parker's bill, on investment. If you don't know, I will follow up myself on the answer to that one. But with that, we would love to hear you and talk about what the League of Conservation Voters is doing and what you think our watchers should be doing.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. And I just want to say we do a scorecard on a regular basis, and Senator has a perfect score on our most recent scorecard. So
Oh,
kudos.
good. Glad to hear that. When it
Right.
goes down, I get nervous.
Well, and I think it's really, it reflects the fact that we know that environment and climate change is a priority for people in Westchester, right? And so that really is reflective, and we're seeing more and more of that. We've had a record number of people seek our endorsement last year, and I think we're going to probably break that record again this year. It's very exciting. I actually want to start with the federal bill. We've been fortunate. I think Senator Kaminsky laid it out right, that for many years during the Trump administration, we were really playing defense at the federal level, just trying to stop rollbacks, which we were not always terribly successful with. The Attorney General has certainly been very busy with that. And New York was really leading and out front. And now we have new leadership and new commitment and new energy around that. And we're very excited to see President Biden advance the American Jobs Plan, which is focused on sort of three core things. One is, taking efforts to achieve 100% clean energy. Two is making sure that those are good, family-sustaining jobs. And three is, as Raya mentioned, is really built on the foundation of the New York model, based on strong advocacy by the New York Renews Coalition, is this 40% investment of funds in disadvantaged and overburdened communities, which really is about changing the way we model our investments and making sure that we're putting frontline communities first in these advocates, in these programs that the government is doing. That includes money for clean water, for energy efficiency, for mass transit, for transitioning 20% of all school buses across the nation to electric, for building out infrastructure to be resilient. So it's really a huge jobs promotion. It's a huge opportunity for us to build back better, as they've all been saying. But really, it is a huge opportunity that we will be doing a lot of advocacy on in the coming months. And we hope that you will all engage on that and help to contact. We have great leaders in our congressional delegation in Westchester. We're very excited. Mondaire Jones has certainly been very active, coming right out of the gate, and that's really exciting. Sort of as the follow-on, we are trying to advocate for clean school buses here in New York. And we know Senator Kennedy has legislation that would make it easier for schools to get funding for electric school buses. And that's something that we are advocating for right now. We'd love to see that move forward. We know that White Plains did a great pilot where they were exploring some vehicle to grid models. We know that Croton School District has on their ballot this year, getting some electric school buses potentially. So this is something we're working at state level, local level, federal level. It's great. We can move our school buses in a new direction. As Senator Kaminsky mentioned, we are very focused on changing how we do recycling. It is the fourth largest source of greenhouse gas emissions in our state. Behind, transportation is number one, which many people do not realize. It beats out the energy sector, and it's closely followed by buildings. So we certainly have a lot of work to do. We know the recycling system is broken. Getting extended producer responsibility would be really fantastic. And it's something that we and a number of other groups are advocating for this year, so that we can stop wasting so much material and really move ourselves into a circular economy. We are also advocating for a bill that's called 30 by 30, where we're trying to protect 30% of our lands and waters by the year 2030. And New York has already made a big commitment to that, with protection of the Adirondacks and the Catskills and the New York City watershed. But we have a lot more that we can do. And we know that there's a lot of pressure from development on open space in Westchester. So certainly this is something that has been a priority sort of more broadly before the 30 by 30 campaign began. But we know that in Westchester, really protecting open space so that people have access to clean air and clean environment is really something that has been top of mind for voters there. Another proposal that we've been working on that's about drinking water is getting our lead out of our school drinking water. The state took action a number of years ago to reduce, to create a threshold of 15 parts per billion. We think it should be lower. Ideally, it's none, but certainly we know we can go to 5 parts per billion. We would be one of the leading states to do that. We are, Senator Rivera has a bill in to do that now. We know that some of the school districts in Westchester County are impacted by these higher lead levels in school drinking water fountains. And we'd love to see that addressed to help the communities in Westchester and get kids off of that, because we know that there are no safe levels of lead for children. We talked about the Bond Act a little bit. I do want to raise it again. That is going to be something that's on the ballot in 2022, and we are going to need everybody to come out and vote for it. We have done a study with our partners, which, by the way, it's not just environmental groups, it's also local governments, it's the business community, it's labor. We expect that would generate about 65,000 jobs. So if you're interested in learning more about that, we have a website. It's New Yorkers for Clean Water and Jobs. That's the coalition that's advancing that effort. So we will be doing a lot more in the next year to educate voters about that ballot initiative, and we hope everybody votes yes. And we know a lot of people in Westchester drive. One of the things we'd like to do is make it easier for you to make that car be electric. And so we are certainly advocating for a bill that would allow what they call the direct sales of electric vehicles, because right now there are some new companies that aren't using a traditional dealer model, like Tesla sells it directly. There are some other new companies, Rivian and Lucid, they only make electric cars, and they'd love to come and sell them just to you. And so that's something we know can make it easier for people to buy electric vehicles. I can touch base. Would you want to ask the question about the food?
Yeah, I want, there's a question here which I asked you. What are our state plans with regards to stronger regulations to minimize food waste, something we mentioned earlier? Do you foresee New York implementing mandates to prevent wasted food and divert food waste from landfilling and incinerations in footsteps of California, Oregon, and even Vermont? What will this look like in the next 5 to 10 years? Thank you.
So the state of New York adopted a law, the Food Waste Reduction and Recycling Act, in 2019. And it requires all large generators of food waste, so those who are generating 2 tons or more per week on average over the course of a year, to, in the first instance, to donate any excess edible food that can be donated. And then anything else, if they're relatively near to a recycling center that can take that food waste, they are required to do separation and recycling of that food waste. So that can be a compost facility, that can be a rendering facility, that can be, in some cases, we know that there are some grocery stores or some food manufacturers that donate food that is edible for animal feed. It can be an anaerobic digester, which takes that material and turns it into a renewable fuel that could then in turn be used either to generate power or to be used in the transportation sector. So these are opportunities that we have. That's happening. So that's at the large generator. Think about like your sort of medium to large grocery store, your larger convention center. Yankee Stadium has to do it under New York City law. So there are a lot. There could be a larger, like a university that has not for commuters, but for who has residential. So there are a variety there. On the individual front, and the Senator was talking about this earlier, there are some localities that provide services. I'm fortunate that there's a drop off not so far from my apartment. I live in New York City, but it's not everywhere yet. On the individual household level, that is something we would love to see more of across all of our communities. Certainly, if that's something people are interested in working on in Westchester, we would be happy to work with you and other groups in Westchester to help make that a reality.
Thank you so much, Julie. Everybody's putting so much density in their short time. It's hard to get to the end. Some of the questions I had here on the clean school buses, where I think, in the education field, the stakeholders that I deal with, there is pushback to all these things with the companies that have built an entire company, an employment base, and an income base off of the old school buses. Even when we put on the safety arms, we had problems originally. All these changes take work and leadership. So I think we'll have to push ahead to get buy-in enough to get these things passed. I mean, I think our Senate majority has been willing to do things that are not always everyone's cup of tea, if we think they're in the right direction. But we do need to build consensus, which I know you work to do with others. I'm thinking also of the testing of water in the schools. We actually had a meeting today about it. I want to be sure that schools will be reimbursed for the costs of restoring, particularly the fountains and other things that cost money, and that they don't feel burdened. I talked to a superintendent today. No one wants these kids to have access to lead, and I'm glad I saw the report and you're pressing ahead. I think it's important, and you've been very effective in bringing other people into your big coalitions and making change. But it's not always easy in this climate, particularly COVID, where the business community feels that they have really suffered disproportionately. So I think it is going to be a challenge, don't you think, to move some of these things ahead in this environment, or are you just full speed ahead?
I think we try to be balanced as far as it goes. I mean, for school buses, for example, there is some grant funding that's available.
Yeah.
We believe that instituting something like the Clean Fuel Standard could actually help get money from the fossil fuel sector to help pay for electric vehicles and make it easier and less expensive for electrification. For school buses, I think we saw that using vehicle to grid, which is where when the bus is not being used, right, because the bus not get used all day long, right? A transit bus runs all day long, and the cost of fuel, they save a lot of money when they switch to electric from fossil fuels based on current pricing. But for school buses, because they don't operate as long, it does take a little bit more, but they can be used as battery storage. So like they can be used for on demand, like in the summertime when it gets very hot and there's peak demand from everyone turning their AC on, the batteries in the buses can be used as energy storage to help alleviate that. And so that creates some additional revenue stream for the school bus operators, as well as provides a service on reducing the stress on our electric grid, which is really kind of cool. And again, there was a pilot in White Plains that was, I think, Con Ed did with the school district and NYSERDA, and they're trying to learn and see how we can expand that. And that's something we're talking actively with Con Ed. We're talking to the New York Power Authority. We're talking to National Grid, because we'd love to see that in other parts of the state as well. And there's also federal grants that can be made available, funding from the VW settlement. So we think there are various opportunities.
Wow, it's really, I mean, hearing all of this whole package on the state and federal level, it gives you the sense of how much dynamism and energy and potential there is. And we're thrilled to have your advocacy and partnership on these issues. Thank you so much for giving us, I hope that those who are watching will go to your website, which is really fantastic and full of both your advocacy agenda and also the substance that gives rise to it, so that people can join, right, as members?
Yes, they can. Mm-hmm.
And that would be great. So thank you again, Julie. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing. And really, it's sort of an appropriate moment to switch to our acting locally, to look at what so many of our activists have done here in Westchester. First, we have Nina Orville, the Executive Director of Sustainable Westchester. I think you've been there how long, Nina? A month?
In that role, I've been there for just under 2 months.
2 months, and really helping lead Westchester and build out for Westchester an approach to sustainability that I think is just fantastic and is a model for many other counties. So we'd love to hear your conversation and look forward to what you have to share with our group here.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Senator Mayer. And I'm so happy to be with you all this evening. And I should say I've been the executive director at Sustainable Westchester for just under 2 months, but I helped start one of the predecessor organizations 10 years ago. So I've been involved since the inception with the organization. So as we've heard from the panelists who have already spoken, New York has adopted really ambitious climate legislation with a critical focus on equity and climate justice. And so what I'm going to talk about is what it means to advance those statewide requirements at the local level here in Westchester County. And the good news is that tackling the climate crisis creates some real opportunities for more vibrant local economies through investment and job creation. And New York State's focus on equity should ensure that a lot of these benefits are flowing to disadvantaged communities and addressing issues related to environmental justice. So Sustainable Westchester is a nonprofit organization that counts 45 Westchester municipalities as members. And we're really perfectly positioned to help translate the statewide legislation into local opportunities here in Westchester County. So we develop and implement programs to help our member municipalities and their communities accelerate progress on climate action while also generating economic benefit. And when we've talked or we've heard this evening about the range of sources of greenhouse gas emissions, and it's clear that we have to take aggressive action simultaneously on multiple fronts in order to achieve the required reductions. And at the high level, that means we have to electrify everything, transportation, heating, et cetera. And we also have to ensure that our electricity is coming from renewable sources. So Sustainable Westchester has been working to green the electric grid in a range of ways. This includes through our Westchester Power Program, the first program of its kind in New York State. And through that program, we provide electricity to over 115,000 households and small businesses in 28 participating municipalities in Westchester County. And really importantly, 26 of those local governments have chosen 100% renewable electricity as the default supply for residents and small businesses in their municipality that are participating in the program. We're really happy that more municipalities join the program each year, and we're thrilled that Yonkers, the fourth largest municipality in the state, is currently in the process of joining. Another community energy program that we offer is community solar, and that's focused on more local generation of renewable energy. We've enrolled, or we're currently in the process of enrolling, over 2,000 households in community solar, and they'll benefit from savings of up to 10% off their electricity bills while supporting solar energy. And really importantly, in a first of its kind effort in New York State, we're launching a new version of this program this year to directly provide these savings to low-income residents in the municipalities participating in the Westchester Power Program. So in those 28 municipalities, it's something we're really thrilled to roll out. In another first related to community solar, we've partnered with the New York Power Authority and with Westchester County on an aggregation in which over 24 municipalities are participating, a host of school districts as well, Senator Mayer, which would be of interest to you.
Yes.
And they're exploring hosting community solar facilities on their buildings and grounds. And this is an effort that is intended to be a model for New York State. In another critical effort that's related to buildings, and this ties in directly to Donovan's work at NYSERDA, we're designing a program to make it easier to decarbonize or electrify buildings in Westchester County, which means moving from fossil fuels, using fossil fuels to heat our residential and commercial buildings, to using clean heating and cooling solutions. This program that we're designing is an outgrowth of the current work that we're doing that is supported by NYSERDA. And it will include working closely with municipalities to help them streamline their permitting processes related to these solutions, obtaining critical information from participating municipalities about existing buildings that would be good candidates for these solutions, and partnering with a really innovative provider that has an approach that reduces the cost to implement these solutions at scale. So our goal is to ensure that municipalities, real estate developers feel confident that clean heating and cooling technologies are reliable and cost-effective solutions for both building retrofits and new construction. And we're very focused in this program design to ensure that low and moderate income residents have the benefits of all these improvements, including improved air quality, very importantly, and affordability. So there are a range of other things that we're working on that I'm not going to delve into, but we're also looking at supporting more rapid adoption of electric vehicles, supporting deployment of energy storage to make sure we're maximizing the value of renewable energy production, and more. So in short, we're very focused on translating the statewide climate imperatives into local opportunities. And we're seeing the real power of the platform that we have created right now in the rollout of NYSERDA's Clean Energy Communities grant program that Donovan spoke about. In addition to other high impact actions, we're currently supporting about 40 community campaigns in partnership with our municipalities, bringing the benefits of a range of different solutions, including clean heating and cooling, demand response, community solar, electric vehicles, to local communities, while also helping our member municipalities secure grant funds for their own sustainability priorities, which is really important, of course, that we're doing that. And partnerships with local governments, with the state, with clean energy providers, local communities, that's all at the heart of our work at Sustainable Westchester. And we're really grateful for the opportunity to collaborate with so many of you who are participating this evening, including with both Karen and Mitch, who you're going to be hearing from next.
Thank you so much. It really is exciting to hear with your leadership all this municipal participation, because it's always been, you know, a sensitive subject for me, who represents from, as I say, from the Bedfords to the Yonkers and everything in between, to make sure that we spread the knowledge and the access. And I know you're very committed to that. I'm very, very appreciative for all of my districts, all of the communities, that you are really so driven on that. I am interested, and I know I'm going to run out of time, to know whether there's a focus on apartments as opposed to single family houses in the residential world, because Westchester continues to be a place where affordability of single family houses is a challenge, and co-ops and rentals still are the one path of affordability here for so many people. And I'm hopeful that we can move towards greater sustainability for them, as well as homeowners and business owners.
It's a critical issue, and in the work that we're designing now related to electrifying buildings,
right,
there is a real focus on ensuring that we're addressing the needs of lower income residents by through a focus on multifamily buildings.
Right.
So that's absolutely a big part of it.
Thank you so much. Wow, it's very, very exciting, and your energy for it is contagious and very exciting to see. And I look forward to working with you, Nina, in your new job and in your new old job. And, and
thank you so much. And likewise, I'm really thrilled with the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And next we have Karen Sabath, the board president of Bedford 2030. And as I mentioned at the beginning, when I first got Bedford in my world, and actually when I was running, I came to a project at Bedford 2020 that was at the high school, and I was blown away. The entire auditorium was filled with families who were engaged in the Bedford 2020 initiative. And I was like, this is the most fantastic local thing I've ever seen. And it's had such success. So now it's Bedford 2030. And we're thrilled you're here, Karen, to talk about what you're doing and give us really a model of what other communities can do.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having us. And we have a lot of work to do. Yes, we were Bedford 2020, and we promised everyone that we would go out of business after 10 years. But the truth is that didn't, it turns out that there's so much more to be done, as we've talked about already all through this, this program tonight. So while I'm happy to be here, I hope that someday we don't have to be tackling all these big issues. And one of the most important things we've done, I think, is to try to give people a sense of where we're coming from and why we're doing this. And so we've tried to measure everything and be able to explain it to people. So as you can see here, we've identified our largest emission sources as primarily buildings, 50%, and 48% from transportation. That's not to say that other issues are not important, but that if we're going to take all of the mandates from the federal level and the state level and the Westchester level down to actually getting it done by the individuals, we have to know what we're tackling. So our goal as a community is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 80% by the year 2030. So we have our work cut out for us. The next slide, please. So if we're looking at those important topics, the key is we want to be able to involve all members of our community, get as many people to be part of the movement as possible. And one of the ways to do that, of course, is through homeowners and through the multifamily dwellings that we have. We have 5,200 buildings that are for residents in this town, not the 4.5 million, thankfully, buildings in New York State, but we have our work cut out for us too. So we're trying to measure all of what we're doing here. We're helping people, hopefully from a homeowner point of view. We've been doing some great data work. So we want to try to help people understand how much is the oil that I'm consuming and using to heat my home contributing to emissions. And so that's something we're working with local companies to be able to understand per household. How do I compare to my neighbors? Peer pressure is powerful. Seeing people make changes to their homes will hopefully cause other behavior changes for neighbors. And we need both policy and action and also financial incentives. It's very clear that homeowners need to do energy efficient upgrades and electrify things, including heat pumps that we've talked about tonight and getting off oil. And yes, they can save on energy bills, but they cost money. And so we're trying to help people figure out how to manage all of the pieces. From a municipal point of view, we are already working on upgrading the municipal buildings and as a town, being sure that we can actually subscribe to renewable energy. So cleaning up the grid, participating in that cleaned up grid, and then making sure that all of our buildings are off of fossil fuels as much as possible. On the commercial side, we have a few large users here, and we have to tackle them individually to actually accomplish our goals. Next slide, please. The other big aspect is transportation. We're hearing a lot about it. It's 48% of our emissions here. We've also done some great data analysis here so that individuals can actually look up, they will have a tool to look up their own VIN number, their own vehicle, and say, how am I doing? Because I drive this many miles, I have driven, because we have DMV data, we know how many miles that VIN has gone. And trying to help people understand how to make their next car an EV, but in the meantime, be more efficient in how they're driving and reduce the miles driven. We're trying to add some high visibility, both chargers and also some specific cars around town. We have lots of programs that are going to be initiated to try to help people understand how do we get our arms around the electric vehicle movement and to participate. Importantly, our municipal fleet, we also have to address, because we have a lot of dump trucks. We have a lot of, snow plows. How do we deal with that? And we actually are working with some very cool, hopefully interesting potential on hydrogen even, and retrofitting some of our large vehicles. There's plenty of potential there, and we want to be one of the first to pilot that and be able to then share that with other communities. And we want to get the students, because we know this is for the next generation. We want to get the students behind a movement to try to force action at the school level to transition buses. And we've been working actually with the Children's Environmental Health Center we have one of them here in Valhalla and Westchester out of the 7 in New York State, to try to help us understand the air quality issues associated with running these diesel buses and having the children on them. So I think that will be a wonderful movement as we go forward. Next, please. So then those are emission sources. And what we're saying is we also need to try to do something to help draw down carbon. I know this is an exciting topic. It's very cutting edge. The science is evolving, and we want to be part of that. And if we can create an incremental ability to pull down carbon, we want to, again, model how a community can do that, pilot some of these. If you can go to the next slide, just throwing out some of the ideas. We have some new programs that we're going to be launching here, trying to have homeowners. We have something like 2,700 acres of lawn. Well, that's just way too much lawn. And we want to be able to help homeowners and other property owners transform plain old lawn into really active carbon sequestration, really active drawdown, make the soil work for us, and use trees and other plants in order to do that. And we are partnering with some educational institutions to try to do some of this, and possibly even get our own town fleet of a town herd, I beg your pardon, of sheep or goats to not only eat invasives, but also to actually regenerate the soil and make the soil healthier. So we have a lot of plans, and we want to get it. We want to get to everybody in the community. We need a climate army on the ground, because this is not going to get done purely with platitudes. It has to get done with actual action.
That's so, it's really quite remarkable. Bedford 2030 is a not-for-profit, right?
Yes.
And with staff and board members, or volunteer staff, or some arrangement thereof?
We have a whole giant, hardworking, incredibly getting done staff of 3 paid professionals, and then we have a terrific board and a lot of volunteers, and we have a wonderful community who continues to support us, and we want to try to do the most we can on the littlest amount of money that it takes.
It really is remarkable, and I hope other people will watch and contact you to learn how to reproduce what you have done in Bedford. It's really a tribute to that community. So much.
Well, we're dying to share,
Yeah.
and we are happy to, and people can reach us at bedford2030.org and info@bedford2030.org, and thanks to your leadership and Senator Kaminsky's leadership too. I think we have a long way to go to fulfill it. Fill the vision, but we want to do that.
Thank you so much, Karen. Thank you. Really appreciate it. Last but definitely not least, Mitch Green, the chair of the Town of Mamaroneck Sustainability Collaborative. We're going to extend our time because it's very important that we hear from Mitch about really the extraordinary stuff that's going on there. And I'm going to turn it over to you to go through. And I know you had a bunch of issues you wanted to make sure we touched. And so go ahead, Mitch, you're the closer. And then.
Okay, thank you very much and good evening. Mitch Green, chair of the Town of Mamaroneck Sustainability Collaborative. And
look at that.
Here come the slides.
Look at that, beautiful. I've been to that. That is beautiful.
On behalf of the town and our government, I'd like to thank Senator Meyer, the other panelists, for really putting on a terrifically informative forum this evening. Just a lot to take away and to think through. So just very briefly, we're going to talk about the Town of Mamaroneck Sustainability Collaborative's 2021 priorities and projects. Just so you know, the Sustainability Collaborative is made up of a group of resident volunteers, and it's open to everyone. Our mission is to advance the resiliency, sustainability, and quality of life of the town and its residents. We actually are an official committee of the town, and our role is to advise the town on policies and regulations, to undertake programs to advance our mission, and to engage with our community on outreach and education. Wherever possible, what we found to be very, very helpful is to collaborate and jointly promote programs with our two neighboring villages, the village of Larchmont and the village of Mamaroneck. It seems that there's power in numbers, and we've all have found ourselves to be much more effective doing that. And one of the things that all three of our groups know is that no matter how good in looking at it by itself, a particular environmental initiative might be, if it's not economically sustainable, it's not going to work for our residents and homeowners and our government. So we're always looking at both sides. So very quickly on this slide, these are some of our priorities and programs for this year. 3 major priorities. The first is cleaner, more reliable energy. The second is community health, advancing that for residents, air, land, and water. The third is minimizing waste. And for all of those, looking at community outreach and education. Next slide. So first of all, cleaner, more reliable energy. We have worked for a number of years very closely with Nina and the rest of Sustainable Westchester. We really have to hand it to them and to Nina for her leadership and the group's leadership. One of the things that we're doing and just finishing up on, and this is an aerial photograph, I think a drone took this morning, of some solar, about 500 kilowatts worth, that we're putting on the roof of our local ice rink. It's the customer target is our low and moderate income households. So this is something that we're trying at our level to look at environmental justice. The business deal has the town leasing the roof to a developer for 20 years with some lease extensions, but also the town has the option to purchase the installation after year 7. Developer, which was the result of an RFP and a competition, Sunlight General Capital. As you can see, the rooftop construction is pretty much complete. The Con Ed inspections and testing will be done by Memorial Day. And we are hoping for Con Ed's permission to operate and go live by the middle of July. So this is a very exciting program for us. We're seeing about 50 households hopefully benefiting. We'd like to get all of them from low and moderate income households if we can. Next slide. So strengthen community health. Like a lot of towns in Westchester, we're concerned about the continuing losses to our town's tree canopy, both on public lands, streets, and in private yards. We're actually working with CUNY on documenting the town's tree canopy losses over time. Just earlier this month, our tree team presented our tree canopy white paper to the town board to a very favorable reception. Our major proposal was to start a multi-year public-private campaign to restore and expand our tree canopy back not only to its historic highs that were probably 20 to 25 years ago, but to go considerably beyond that. We've actually been very fortunate to have a couple of donations that kickstarted this effort. And we are assisting the town in identifying locations for new trees. So the image on the right is actually from the neighborhood that I live in. And we looked back on our information from 2013 to this month. And what we've noticed is that over time, we've lost 12 trees. We only planted 5 more. And so we're seeing a net loss. And in order to make this program work, we're going to have to get this granular. Which side of the street are the power poles on? Where are the sewers? How big is that grass patch between the curb and the sidewalk? Will it fit there? Who's going to take care of that tree for the first 2 or 3 years to make sure it survives? And then how is the resident going to feel who's adjacent to it about taking care of it after that? We're obviously looking at a lot of community outreach and education to reinforce the value of trees as problem solvers and contributors to our resident quality of life. And back to those power poles, not clear there's a solution anytime soon, but there is a continuing zero-sum conflict between trees and wires that we have to all work ourselves out of sooner than later.
Underground wires, that's me, underground.
Okay, let's go to the next one. So the third major topic is minimizing waste. This is a joint program of the town and our school district, which also includes the 2 villages. We received a 3-year grant of funding from the DEC at the state level. The focus is for reducing waste throughout the process. And as part of that, we are folding in where we can an environmental justice component. At the school level, we started off in 2019 and 2020 with sharing tables, food recovery, and food donations. We've been able to gain the collaboration of Aramark, who is the food service provider in the schools, our local food pantries and soup kitchens. And although we had a big drop down in food recovered during most of the pandemic, for the first 3 months of this year, the schools are back up to 4,000 pounds of food that might have been waste diverted to other beneficial uses. With the pandemic, we've been able to talk to the state and shifted some funding from some in-person events, which couldn't happen last year, to virtual education. So we have at a variety of levels, student level, as well as some professional levels, working with our local television station, videos in production on community-wide and student education and training. We are having actually on Saturday, our 4th annual compost give back day, which is part of our food scrap recycling. And we will be having food demonstrations at the farmers market, hopefully later this spring and then into the early fall. So our last program that we want to talk about is community outreach and education. This is a collaboration between the collaborative and our high school's OKRA program, which is the original civic research and action program for high school students. Their focus is to translate personal exploration into environmental action. The app, which will be, it has been developed, will incorporate our 2021 priorities and programs, and it has links to do-it-yourself videos, websites, and information sources. It will dramatically increase our community outreach and education, especially for those of us, frankly, who've given up on the computer and the phone and get everything from our mobile. We're currently in beta testing, and the OKRA program has done this with other apps before, so we're very confident in the efficacy of that. Final preparations in early May, and we are hoping and expecting to be able to go live somewhere around May the 15th. So for the last slide, that's our highlights. On the agenda, a whole series of things. We want to talk to Bedford about setting community-wide targets for emissions reduction. We are looking for neighborhood by neighborhood, street by street solutions for clean and resilient power during storms. You can see some of the other key things we're doing. And so back to you, Senator Meyer, and we are so happy to contribute.
Wow, that is fantastic. I mean, there's so many exciting things. I just have to say, the Mr. Liberti's class at Mamaroneck High School, working on your app, special place in our heart. Thank you for that. Love the hammocks, solar top. That is fantastic. And I really have a special soft spot for this tree planting. For years, I tried to get the state to donate trees to plant. And I'm so glad you have this thoughtful approach to really expanding the canopy, because we left that behind and we have to fix it. So it really is a compliment to what Sustainable Westchester, Bedford has done, and what you're doing in Mamaroneck. And with such creativity and activism, I really feel very, very fortunate that you could share this with us and hopefully give good ideas to so many people. I'm just going to close on a few points. One, there was a question, when is the next Climate Action Council meeting? May 10th. Thank you, Raya Salter. Two, my former colleague and fantastic friend, former Senator Jen Metzger, was watching on Facebook, a true environmental activist. I send my best to you and look forward to you rejoining us in the Senate. And three, I want to make sure to thank my staff, Rachel Estroff and Mary Kate O'Sullivan and Mike and trying to just make sure, and Lily McFarland, everyone that worked on this with me, thank you so much. This was fascinating. I wish we had more time, but we learned a great deal and we're so appreciative for everyone's work. Thank you. And we will circulate the contact information of the panelists so people can have it. Thank you. Good night. I feel very green. I feel bad going in my car to go home, but you've all educated and informed and made us better activists. Thank you so much. Yes, and Marianne, thank you Marianne as well. So thank you, Rachel, for reminding me. Thank you all.
Thank
Good night.
you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good night.
Pleasure.